It's time to break free from a script that was never yours. Since you were a child, you were taught to always be available, to smile out of politeness, to respond out of obligation, to justify yourself even when no one asked you to. And without even realizing it, you became someone far too accessible, too easy, too transparent. But let me tell you something that might hurt. The easier you are to reach, the less value you project. People are watching you, and when they notice that you react to any absence, any hint or subtle gesture, they test you even more, because they know your buttons are exposed. And those who have visible buttons live constantly being pushed. That's where something few dare to practice comes in. The art of becoming unreachable. Not out of pride, but out of self-mastery. Not as an escape, but as a strategy. Being unreachable doesn't mean withdrawing from the world. It means knowing what deserves your energy, and what doesn't even deserve your silence. It means no longer reacting on impulse, no longer rushing to explain yourself, no longer hurrying to please. Because every time you over-explain, you over-give. And every time you over-give, you lose a part of yourself. Silence, when it's firm, commands more respect than 1,000 words. And mystery, when it's real, is worth more than any amount of overexposure. Have you noticed that the ones who speak the least command the most? They don't shout. They don't need to. They don't explain themselves. Because they know who they are. The less you strive to be understood, the more others try to figure you out. And the more they try to figure you out, the higher you rise. Human beings are naturally drawn to what they cannot control. That's why the unreachable don't lose. They filter. They filter relationships, conversations, environments, even thoughts, because they've realized that restraint is another form of strength. And you know what the greatest power of the unreachable is? They don't cling, not out of coldness, but because they've learned that holding on to what hurts is betraying oneself. If something holds you back more than it drives you forward, let it go. No speeches, no guilt, no promises to return. Being unreachable is not about closing your heart, it's about closing the door to what should have left long ago. You're not here to convince anyone of your worth. Those who want to question you will do so based on the version they invented of you. And those who need proof to respect you never really respected you at all. So be quiet. Let time put everything in its place. Because anyone who needs to scream their truth is still unsure of it. And you're no longer here to explain yourself to those who can't even hold themselves up. In an era where everyone is desperate to be heard, those who master silence command presence. You don't need to be everywhere. You just need to make it impossible to be ignored when you are. That can only be achieved by someone who stopped reacting, who no longer breaks down over a glance, a message left unanswered, or someone else's expectations. Because they've understood, they're not obligated to respond to everything thrown at them. Being unreachable is not coldness, it's emotional strength. The one who takes everything personally lives at the mercy of their surroundings. The one who chooses when and how to act lives in command of themselves. That's not disconnection, it's mastery. It's knowing which battles are worth stepping into, and which you shouldn't even show up for. You respond when silence no longer serves you, but as long as it does, you use it. Because you've realized that giving explanations to those unwilling to understand is just draining. And when you stop reacting, the roles change. The one who used to play with your boundaries now faces your distance. The one who expected your weakness is now met with your absence, and you remain there, without noise, without apologies, but with a peace so deep, the world doesn't know how to interpret it. Reaching that point, isn't easy because it requires letting go. Letting go of the need to be liked, to please, to fit in. Letting go of the version of you that kept begging for affection, approval, understanding. Because as long as you crave validation, you'll remain accessible to those who don't deserve you. And what's accessible, when given without filters, loses its value. That's why real boundaries aren't written. They're embodied. They are held in silence, defended through action. They don't make noise, but they echo. And when you respect them first, others have no choice but to do the same. When you live with clear boundaries, the atmosphere around you changes. You don't need warnings. You don't need explanations. People can feel it. And yes, some might walk away, but that's not a loss. It's purification. Letting go also means releasing burdens that were never yours. You're not here to save those who refuse to swim. You're not the emotional lifeline for those who keep sinking by choice. You're not the container for what others don't want to process. Your energy is not limitless. And treating it like it is a slow form of self-destruction. Every time you shrink yourself to fit in, you tear off a piece of yourself that doesn't come back. Mystery is not a wall, it's a filter, and only those who deserve it can pass through. Silence is not coldness, it's a language only a few know how to read. Serenity, that calm that sometimes makes you seem distant, is a luxury few have earned. It doesn't come from being born strong. It comes from getting lost, breaking down, rebuilding, and learning never to lower yourself again. And that's what makes you magnetic. Because when someone sees your calm, they feel there's something there that can't be earned through likes or instant validation. They feel there's weight, substance, truth. Next time someone tries to drag you into the noise, remember, not reacting is also a way of communicating. Not justifying yourself is also a way of asserting. Not being available is also a way of protecting yourself. Silence is a response, and sometimes it's the most powerful one, because it leaves no room for misinterpretation. It simply makes it clear you are no longer within reach. And in that moment, the game changes. The one who used to manipulate you is left without weapons. The one who relied on your explanations is now faced with your absence. Because respect cannot be demanded. It must be embodied. And self-control is its most elegant form. Being unreachable is not about disappearing. It's about showing up when you choose to. It's not coldness, it's dignity. It's not pride, it's selection. And when you choose not to be available to everyone, that's when the world starts to value every moment it gets to have you close. Because now they understand, your presence is not a right. It's a privilege. Being unreachable doesn't mean disappearing from the map. It means telling the world, through every gesture, every silence, that your presence is not a free gift. It's something to be earned. And when someone tries to force their way in, all they find is the dry echo of your silence. Not out of hatred, not out of anger, but because you no longer react like you used to. And that, though it may not seem like it, is freedom. When you stop living to please, to justify, to respond to every expectation, something within you realigns. A calm settles in, one that unsettles others but heals you. Because now you know you owe nothing, and anyone who wants something from you will have to earn it. Reaching this point is not easy. It means loss. It means disappointment. It means letting go of habits, people, and bonds built on emotional dependence. But in return, you reclaim what's most valuable, your center. And with it comes a different energy, one that isn't loud but is deeply felt. That energy you radiate when you walk without rushing, when you look without seeking approval, when you speak only when you feel it's necessary. That energy doesn't ask for permission to exist. It doesn't beg for a seat at the table. It doesn't fear silence because it no longer needs noise to feel valid. People sense it, and even if they don't understand it, they respect it. Because what they can't read intimidates them. What they can't control intrigues them. What they can't manipulate fascinates them. That's why being unreachable also means being intentional about what you share, with whom, and when. Not everyone deserves your full version. Some things belong only to you. Your plans, your emotions, your most intimate thoughts. They are not bargaining chips. They are your sacred ground. The less you expose, the more value you hold. The more you choose, the more you are respected. And no, it's not coldness. It's a way of protecting your essence in a world where everyone wants a piece of you, but few are willing to care for what they receive. Next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to justify yourself, to react on impulse, breathe. Remember, you don't have to be available to everyone, that your energy is not public property, and that the more you own yourself, the less accessible you become to those who don't deserve you. That is the true elegance of detachment, to be present without need, to share without giving yourself away, to show up without begging to be seen. And that, in a world desperate for attention, is pure power. The difference between being alone and feeling alone is more than just semantics. Being alone is freedom. Feeling alone is lack. One is born from a conscious choice, the other from an unresolved dependency. That's why those who learn to be with themselves without distress discover a strength the world can't take away. Knowing who you give access to your energy is one of the purest forms of self-love. Not everyone is ready to hold your vulnerability. Not everyone knows how to care for what you entrust them with. That's why learning to protect your inner world isn't about shutting down. It's about honoring yourself. Silence, when it's intentional, carries more weight than 1,000 justified words. When you don't respond with anger, when you don't fall into provocation, when you choose silence where others scream, you radiate a calm that commands respect. The one who doesn't react loses the fear of being controlled. And that's when the game changes. Because many people need your reaction in order to dominate you. They need to see that it affects you, that it shakes you, that it pulls you out of yourself. But when they can't, when they realize you have no visible buttons, they fall apart. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned not to give them that power. There's another point that often goes unnoticed. The character you created to please, to fit in, to avoid discomfort, can become a prison. Maybe it was useful at first. But if it no longer represents you, then every day you hold on to it becomes a silent betrayal of yourself. And that distance between who you are and what you pretend to be, you feel it. It builds up in the form of exhaustion, anxiety, existential emptiness. The price of authenticity may seem high, but the cost of living disconnected from your essence is much greater. It just gets paid in installments, with your peace. When you decide to let go of that character, something powerful happens. Yes, some will walk away, but the ones who stay, they're real. They're the ones who connect with you without masks, without decoration, without absurd demands. And that kind of connection can't be bought. It's built through coherence, because when you act from your truth, even in silence, you radiate it. In your posture, in your gaze, in the way you move through the world. And that creates a presence that's impossible to ignore. So every time you choose not to react on impulse, every time you prioritize your peace over someone else's expectations, you're sharpening your character. You're solidifying your center. And the world, even if it doesn't say so, notices. Because the respect commanded by someone who's aligned is felt before a single word is spoken. Now that you understand it, now that it lives inside you, ask yourself this question without evasion. What are you willing to let go of in order to become someone firm, centered, who no longer needs to react to every touch just to feel present? Because becoming unreachable isn't about building walls, it's about sharpening your gaze. It's not about running from the world, it's about returning to yourself. And that clarity, that connection with yourself is worth more than 1,000 borrowed validations. Let's move forward. Once you understand that conscious inaccessibility is self-respect, it's time to face an equally important concept: knowing the difference between self-control and self-repression. Because silencing yourself out of fear is one thing, choosing silence from a place of inner security is something entirely different. The one who represses out of fear rots from the inside. The one who controls himself with clarity strengthens in silence. True self-control is not repression. It's emotional mastery. It's the art of knowing when to speak, when to wait, and when to do absolutely nothing. Because every word you don't need to say, every impulse you resist, gives you back power. Real power. The kind you don't shout, the kind that's felt on your skin. And here comes a silent weapon few have mastered: active patience. That ability to not rush, to not respond with anxiety, to not correct others out of ego. The patient one observes chaos without entering it. Not because they can't, but because they choose not to get dirty. The impulsive acts today and regrets tomorrow. The patient one waits and gets it right. But being patient is no easy task. It's an internal battle. It's feeling everything inside you scream to move, to defend yourself, to shout your version, and still choosing to stay still. Because you know that time always reveals. Because you trust that your worth doesn't depend on responding to just anyone. And that brings us to the next level: managing your own value. Because yes, you decide how much you're worth. Not through empty affirmations in the mirror, but through concrete actions. What do you tolerate? What do you allow? What do you give your energy to? Every daily choice reflects the price you place on your own dignity. Not everyone should have access to you. Not because you're better, but because you've learned to protect yourself. Because you understand that there are people, situations, environments that don't deserve your presence or your explanation. Being unreachable also means understanding this. The most valuable thing is not what you share. It's what you choose to keep. And when you learn to keep the best of yourself, to not spill over for every provocation, to hold your energy high without bargaining it away, something shifts in your world. Because the one who knows how to wait knows how to rule. Because the one who masters their reaction masters their life. Personal worth isn't something you declare, it's something you live. And living it begins in the most ordinary things: how you manage your energy, who you give your time to, what emotions you're willing to share. When someone receives your attention without having earned your respect, you're silently discounting your own value. And the worst part? They don't even realize it, because you were the one who taught them you were cheap. Don't confuse being present with being available. Presence makes an impact. It leaves a mark. Constant availability drains you. It dilutes you. You're everywhere, for everyone, at every hour. And then you wonder why no one takes care of you, why no one respects you. Because the one who's always there stops mattering. Because the one who gives themselves entirely, without boundaries, becomes background. True influence doesn't come from being present all the time. It comes from being so solid, so whole, that even when you're not there, your absence is felt. And that only happens when you stop showing up out of fear. Because the fear of losing connections is, in truth, the chain that keeps you tied to things that no longer have value. This is where something much deeper comes into play. Emotional dignity. Dignity is not misunderstood pride nor fake coldness. It's the clarity that you will not beg for attention, that you won't explain your silence to someone who never valued your words in the first place. Dignity is knowing when to walk away. It's not forcing conversations. It's understanding that your silence also speaks, and that sometimes not responding is the most powerful response. And those who don't understand that simply don't deserve access to you. You're not here to convince anyone of your worth. You're here to experience it, live it, carry it with such conviction that no one needs to ask how much you're worth. Because you project it effortlessly. Because those who know what they deserve don't waste themselves trying to prove it. And if you've made it this far, then it's time to face something most people avoid. Sometimes freedom begins with a painful act. Conscious rejection. Choosing not to show up, not answering, not justifying yourself, not because you're cruel, but because you finally learned to protect your dignity before your image. Earning to reject what doesn't resonate with you is an act of courage, even if it comes with a pretty name, even if it looks exactly like what you asked for. Being unreachable isn't about closing yourself off from the world. It's about closing the door to anything that distracts you, to anything that pulls you back to the place you swore you'd never return to. True self-control isn't about repressing what you feel. It's about choosing where you feel from. It's saying no to the impulse that sabotages you, even when it feels tempting. It's choosing peace over the moment, because what comes easy often comes at a high cost. And here the concept evolves. Becoming unreachable is no longer a defense. It becomes a manifestation of self-love. It's looking at what used to hurt and realizing it no longer bleeds. It's crossing paths with people who once triggered you, and now only generate silence. Because you no longer need to be understood. You're not looking for explanations. You're not begging for presence. You became enough. Not because you repeated in motivational quotes, but because you lived it. Because you got lost, gathered yourself, and rebuilt without witnesses. And that creates a different energy. You no longer attract from lack, but from wholeness. You no longer connect out of need, but out of choice. And that choice changes everything. It transforms your relationships. It redefines your boundaries. It changes how you speak to yourself, how others experience you. Because when the noise no longer affects you, the world loses its power over you. And that, right there, is where true freedom begins. The kind that doesn't depend on who validates you. The kind that doesn't rise and fall with someone else's emotional weather. The kind that stands firm when everything around you shakes. And if you're feeling this deeply, if every word resonates as though you're already living this process, then you're ready for what comes next. Because after becoming unreachable, the most crucial moment arrives. Living from integrity. Not to be seen, not to be applauded, but because you no longer know how to live any other way. And that silent firmness, that unshowy coherence, is what makes you unforgettable. At this point, everything changes. You no longer move forward because you're being pushed, nor step back out of fear. You walk with steady steps because you know your worth doesn't depend on being noticed. You've stopped chasing recognition because you've understood that those who truly see don't need you to shout. And yes, there will be days when you doubt. Moments when the old version of you wants to return. Sometimes you'll respond when you promise to stay silent. Sometimes you'll betray yourself, but only for a second. Because now you know. And once you know, you can't pretend you don't. Becoming unreachable isn't about building walls. It's about learning to choose what passes through your doors. It's about protecting what you've built inside, with a peace that is no longer negotiable. It's not coldness. It's direction. It's not distance. It's focus. So I want to propose something. If anything in this message resonated with you, leave this phrase in the comments. My presence is not for everyone, and neither is my silence. I want to see how many are ready to stop explaining themselves. How many have chosen firmness over reaction? Because those who understand this message no longer seek to belong. They belong to themselves. And if this video stirred something in you, a doubt, a discomfort, a part of yourself you had hidden, subscribe. We don't decorate the surface here. We dig deep. Because we know that discomfort doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. I won't say goodbye. Because this doesn't end here. This is just the beginning. And what's coming next is not a conclusion. It's a transformation. So don't fill this moment with empty words. Stay with the echo. With that quiet silence that settles in when something truly made sense. Because if you've learned to stay silent when everyone reacts, to choose when to show yourself, and more importantly, when to disappear, then you are no longer the same. And believe me, the world will notice. Even if you say nothing. I disappear,